Hello, once again, everyone. I'm your host, Ray Shasho. Welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency, specializing in authors and musicians. Remember, we shine only when we make you shine. Call us today at 9401-567-6193 for a free PR evaluation. Elliott Randall's illustrious career has encompassed a wide and varied cross-section of world musical forms. These include record production, composition, electronic research and development, lectures and teaching, and of course, a legendary contribution to popular guitar and performance and recording. His guitar solos on Steely Dan's Reelin in the Years and Fame have entered rock history annals. Elliot has recorded and performed with artists as diverse as the Doobie Brothers, Carly Simon, Seatrain, the Blues Brothers, Carl Wilson, Peter Wolf, Peter Frampton, James Galway, Richie Havens, the Rochester Philharmonic, and the American Symphony Orchestra, among many others. In addition, he is a favorite of esteemed songwriters, Jimmy Webb, George David Weiss, Covay and Laura Nyro. Other credits include music consultant for NBC Saturday Night Live and Oliver Stone, and projects with producers Jerry Wexler, Joel Dorn, Steve Lillywhite, Eddie Kramer, among many others. In addition to artistic projects, Elliot has also played, produced, and composed advertisements for television, radio, and cinema. Please welcome legendary session guitarist and musician, Elliott Randall, to Interviewing the Legends. Hello, Elliot.
Howdy. Hi, Ray. Hi, everybody out there.
I'd love to see guitars in the background. That's cool.
Come on over. They're always here.
How many do you have?
Not as many as some people would think I do, but probably 12 or 14 that I really, really like.
That's not bad. You know, a lot of musicians are getting rid of their guitars, you know, like David Gilmour, Eric Clapton. They sold a bunch of them, you know. I guess after a while, you can't play them all, you know.
No, you can't. You can't. And, you know, when musicians are actually selling their stuff off for good cause, charity, etc.,
exactly,
it's great.
It is great.
And funny enough, I mean, I'm at a point, I as you said, I did a lot of consulting for various electronics companies.
Right.
And I've got cupboards and cupboards full of incredible old analog effects.
Yeah.
You know, the whole Neutron series, most of the Electroharmonic series. And just recently I thought to myself, most of this stuff is collecting dust.
Yeah.
And what I thought I would do is give some of them new homes. So I opened up a page on reverb.com.
Okay.
And, you know, so far, some of the items have really made people happy, which makes me happy.
Right. Has there been an Elliott Randall signature guitar or amplifier or pedal or fuzz effect or anything like that?
Well, funny enough, I'm actually in conversation right now with a company about doing an Elliott Randall model.
Oh, good.
But having said that,
right,
you know, guitars are a very personal thing.
Right.
And I know people will buy a guitar because of the name. Are they going to sound like the player? Not unless they studied them really, really well. So I see it as sort of as it's not really my cup of tea. I don't want to get into a competition with all these other guys who are selling, you know, the same Stratocaster with maybe different pickups.
Right, right. That's true.
And I mean that respectfully, of course, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of the pedals that I've worked on, a lot of the various sound effects, you could say have my signature on them because I would make suggestions to the various companies, and I was very happy that some of them said, "Yeah, that's a great idea. We'll do that." You know, so there you go.
Can you put together a system with pedals and feedback and reverb and all that you plug in and would pretty much sound like you? Is that possible?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Funny thing is, though, and it's been said many times before
Hmm.
that it's more in the fingers than it is in the components.
Right.
So I can pick up any guitar virtually, and it's going to sound more or less like me.
Yeah. You know what I've noticed recently, though? They've gotten these guitars where you don't have to do a lot. And I don't like that because it takes the skill out of the musician. I mean, I've seen players just go like this, and it just goes. It's like it's automatic.
Yeah. Now, to
And
me, it's all about studying technique and refining your own skills
yep,
and being able to do it on anything.
exactly. That's why it's better. I love to hear a guitarist play cleanly without any effects, and just plug in, and he can play anywhere. He doesn't have to be plugged into a studio or anything. And that's when that's a great guitar player, when you can play cleanly like that.
Indeed, that's very true.
Yeah, like you.
Fact, it's thanks. It's funny because there are times where I'll go out and I'll teach/preach to a bunch of young people,
right?
And some guitar player will get up. It could be very, very good too, but nothing but fuzz. Lots of distortion. And I'll go, do me a favor, could you play that without the pedal on? And a lot of them go,
exactly. Yeah, you're
it's
exactly
funny.
right.
Also, on a technological level,
Mm-hmm.
most of the recordings that I do these days is here in my little production suite.
Huh.
And I record into two different kinds of DAWs. My favorite is Pro Tools.
Yep.
And the other is Apple's Logic X.
Mm-hmm.
And the way these things record,
Mm-hmm.
by default, is they record simply the direct sound.
Mm-hmm.
And you can affect the direct sound by plugging in an amp plug-in or any kind of plug-in you want, and you go bananas.
So by saying that, are you missing anything than you would have done in a recording studio when you plug into Pro Tools?
The only thing that I miss
right
is interaction with a bunch of other musicians.
Okay.
That's what I miss most about, the old studio days,
Right.
where somebody gets an idea and then the bass player says to the drummer, hey, what about if we leave out the 3 and just, and these things just happen.
Right.
What's the right word? There's a word someplace. You can cut this, right?
Well, it's a camaraderie too among musicians, which is very cool,
Yes. Organically was the word I was looking
organically,
for.
okay.
It happens organically.
Yeah. So what do you got going on these days?
Well,
we know you're with students. We know that. I know you recorded with a band, Posse, and the Randall's Rangers. Is that still happening, or what?
Well, it was
right
until the Great Plague. These days, I really still try and stay safe.
Okay.
So no, there's not a whole lot of any kind of interactive performance going on, whether it's recording or stage. Having said that, I've got some really, really talented friends, actually all over the planet.
Right.
And if I record something here, I don't hesitate to call them up and say, hey, would you like to put, some bass on this track, or drums or whatever? And we come up with, the way things have worked out as time has gone on. Musicians can really not be in the same room together and you'd never know it. Because if you get people who are really good enough and in tune enough with what you're doing, you wind up sounding like you're all sitting in the same room playing at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. Huh, interesting. So does that mean you're still doing a little bit of session work as well? I mean, are they still calling you up for doing stuff like that?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. A lot of it's actually stemming out of the States.
Yeah.
Which is nice because it keeps me in touch with my old friends.
Yep.
And we can sort of brainstorm together. I'm working with a guy called Joe Serrazano, whose name most people wouldn't recognize.
Right.
However, you would recognize his voice in an instant. If you were around in the 80s and listening to all of the big, sort of multi-corporate commercials,
Right.
Coke, Pepsi, Miller
Yeah.
Beer, this, that, the
Yeah.
other. So it's just one of those great voices. So he got hold of me a couple of weeks ago and said, I'm doing a project. Would you be interested? And I said, send over a couple of demos of what you're doing, and I'll tell you. He sent them over. I loved what he did. And he's working with a guy called Kenny Landrum, whom I also knew from the studios back in the 70s and 80s. A really, really fine keyboard player, arranger, producer. And we had a wonderful time, the three of us sitting on Zoom for about an hour, discussing how we wanted to go about doing the project. And I must tell you, I'm really thrilled with what came out.
Well, we want to see an album, a new album by you with a lot of guest artists.
You know what? You may get your wish.
Yeah.
I mean, what I do also in answer to your question about, what do I do these days?
Right.
I do a lot of composition.
Okay.
I'll come up to my little room here and just turn on the computer, turn on the DAW, and start trying to create.
Right.
I say trying to because sometimes it works out great and other times it's less than great. So, I make what I call these little sound paintings. And when I've reached the point where I'm happy enough with something, I'll send it off to other musicians and get it nice and filled up.
Very cool. I admire you because you've done so many things in your career, but the commercial stuff you've done, with advertising and, that's got to be very lucrative.
It was incredibly lucrative. It was incredibly fun because in doing commercials, the whole ethos of the recording session changes.
Yeah.
You're in there for an hour, maybe an hour and 20 minutes,
Right.
an hour and 40 minutes. That was the call. You're booked 9 to 10 or 9 to 10 with a possible 20 minutes, with a possible 40 minutes.
Right.
And you have to really nail it straight away, because these people don't have time or money to waste. So, God, you get to play with some of the most incredible musicians in the world. I mean, because who would turn down the opportunity to go and have a blast for an hour and then make money for sometimes years and years and years following? Because every 13 weeks they renew a commercial, you get paid all over again.
So do you get royalties like you do with songwriting, I guess, from commercials? You do?
Yeah. They're called residuals.
Residuals, right.
Yeah. What I used to tell people, and I still do, is that's the way you support your dreams.
Exactly.
You're doing this thing. It's not particularly bad. It can be really, really fun. But then you wind up being able to invest some of the money that comes in into your own artistic endeavors.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I love that. Absolutely love that.
I did top 40. I was a top 40 DJ back in the late 70s.
Oh, wow.
And I had to cut commercials, voice. And they were a lot of fun, actually. And you had to get creative and, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I appreciate that, And today there's more commercials than ever. In radio back then, 3 commercials in a row, and that was it, But now you forget what station you were listening to after a while,
Indeed. And that's true. That's very true. And you know what else? I don't mean to sound like a grumpy old man, but the way commercials, both visually and orally, are being created and treated these days, feels less skillful, than they did back in the days when we did them.
Yeah.
There's not that much thought. Sometimes, there's actually there's a lot of use of library music tracks. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because that's another way I make some of my money, is getting reuses on library tracks that I've done. But there's no personal skill involved
exactly
for the producers.
Yeah.
And that it saddens me a bit.
Well,
But you know,
they used to take a guy like
compromise.
you and you would create the music for commercial. Now they're using classic rock songs, to me, that's a little lazy,
It is.
Yeah. I miss those days. And I miss jingles too on radio. The jingles were incredible. Yeah, I
Well,
love
they're
jingles.
yes, and they were written with such skill.
They
You
were.
know, if you think about the logo, NBC, dang, dang, dang,
Exactly.
531, and
Right.
it was wonderful. Who could? It was so simple. You
Yeah.
know, it's almost, I dare say, almost Bach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, or some of the great, very very memorable tunes. I say tunes for lack of a better word, but
Mm-hmm.
Alka-Seltzer, plop
Yeah.
plop, fizz fizz. Oh, what a
Yeah.
relief it is! I mean, people were being really really clever.
Yep.
I had a friend who was the head of um, the entire music department for BBD&O, big
Mm-hmm.
advertising agency. A guy called Mark Fredericks,
Okay.
and he was incredibly well respected by his peers, and
Mm-hmm.
by peers I mean not just the jingle industry, but musicians in general. He wrote a book that's like this thick called the
Mm-hmm.
Click Book,
Okay.
and what it is we used to record to a click track.
Right.
We,
Right.
we still do, but what that does is it assures that everybody's in the same place at the same time, and that it fits with, assuming it's a visual. If they want to crash at a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
they reference it to a click.
Mm-hmm.
And so the skill involved in composing to a click,
Mm-hmm.
let alone having written the book,
Right.
just amazing. So
Is there a certain jingle that we can all identify with that you wrote, music wise?
oh gosh, I wrote a bunch of the Budweiser beer commercials,
Okay.
but I couldn't name you one or play you one off the top of my head
Right.
because they went by fast and furious. I mean, sometimes you would do between 6 and 8 commercials a day.
Right.
If assuming you were one of the lucky people who was always working,
Mm-hmm.
you would just go from studio to studio to studio and of course, most of the music was different. It
Yeah.
wasn't all the rock genre. In fact, we used to do Coca-Cola a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the ad agency was McCann Erickson, and the producers were Gary Sherman and Stanley Kahn, who
Mm-hmm.
actually were pop producers before they got into jingles, which is the
Yep.
case with a lot of people. I think they did Freddie, hey girl, I want you to
Oh
know.
yeah. Sure.
Now,
Great song.
yeah. So where was I going with this? They remind me where we started. Oh
You're
yeah, I mean it was about the skill level and
right.
being able to move from one genre to another.
Right.
So we're doing Coca-Cola, and it was very comprehensive stuff. With Coke, they'd book you for 4 or 5 or 6 hours because
Mm-hmm.
they would do the same commercial but done in different styles. So you get the same melody more or less, and variations on the same words. But one of them would be rock, one of them would be country, one of them would
Mm-hmm.
be easy listening.
Yep.
And you wouldn't just do one, you would do at least 3. You would do a
Mm-hmm.
60-second and a 30-second and a
Gotcha.
10-second.
Yep.
And to just be putting out all that stuff and getting into different styles at the snap of a finger, man, that was thrilling.
Yeah.
Absolutely thrilling.
I interviewed a lot of rock stars that have done the same thing you've done, only,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like voice wise, musically and whatever. The guy who did Eye of the Tiger, I think Dave Bickler, he
Mm-hmm.
did the Real American Men, the beer commercial,
Oh yeah, sure.
yeah, that was him. He did that. It was a Jimmy Hahn. He did the oh gosh, but it's pretty cool when you talk to these guys. They've done all these commercials. You had no idea, And again, it's very lucrative. Have you done games? Have you done video games as well?
Not really.
Okay,
A very good friend of mine, Suzanne Ciani,
right.
a synthesist,
Mm-hmm.
whom you might want to interview because she's phenomenal.
Okay.
phenomenal musician, phenomenal composer, brain, funny as hell.
Right.
But she started it when she came to New York from New England,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the beginning of the game era,
Right.
and she made absolute fortunes
Yeah. Oh,
making
yeah.
some of those weird early synthetic sounds.
It
So I
got
mean, it's something I
so
wouldn't
big.
turn it down. I wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah.
Um,
Very lucrative.
oh yeah, yeah. And now of course you get um, you get these, obviously it's not like a little baby computer screen
Mhm.
it's immersive sound.
Yeah.
It's as far as you want to take it.
Right.
If the producers of the game will let you
Yeah.
can get pretty nuts.
Well, the games today are so realistic. I'm kind of part of that. I was in the electronics business for years, and my
Wow.
family was. We started with Pong. We had the first Pong game.
Wow.
Then we got into Atari and television, Nintendo. We had all those games. We were one of the first in DC to start selling those games. And it all started with Nintendo handheld little electronic games that
I
had
remember those
Donkey
boxes.
Kong and Mario and all that. That was before TV, the
Yeah.
TV consoles. And we sold all those games way back when. Yeah. I didn't think it was going to get this big, though. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, you have to look at, I mean, what is the audience today and
Hmm.
for what?
Right.
Assuming one is looking to say, okay, I want to make some money. I want to make some money doing music. What are the different areas that I can?
Yeah.
Making a record is probably the least
Yeah, I
lucrative
know.
for most people,
Yeah.
And I don't say that disrespectfully.
Yeah.
I just, I mean, the industry has changed,
Big
and
time.
it's at a point now where if you want to make a lot of money, if you want to monetize a musical product,
Hmm.
the best thing to do still, to me anyway,
Hmm.
is finding a really good music supervisor for film
Right.
and getting it used in film, because
Exactly.
there's a lot more money to be made.
Have you done that
There's
yet?
nothing. Sorry.
Have you done that yet? Have you done film scores or?
I've done some, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um, but what happens is, it's in the hands of the the company that owns the film
Hmm.
to publicize it and do all those things that a record company might do
Hmm.
otherwise. And the overhead for them is, in terms of your cut, it's very, very small,
Yeah.
because they're not having to go hire some promo guy to hit every radio station and give the guy $100 bill, which they used to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, well, you would know that.
Well, I think they should bring that back, actually.
uh,
Maybe we'll get some better music on the radio.
that would be good. That would be really, really good.
Yeah. I'm actually presenting a pilot for a TV show, and I'm going to be doing that in September. But if I have to write the script and it goes anywhere, I'll let you know because I'll need some music for it.
That'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely great.
It's actually a
And
story about me growing up in the family business. It's going to be based on my book, one of my books, anyway.
great,
Yeah,
great.
I think it's got a lot of great characters in it, so and it'll be funny with a little bit of drama. We'll
Wonderful.
we'll see how that goes.
When you talk about composing music for a film or for a
Right,
TV or whatever,
right.
it's amazing how much music a composer compiles
Mm-hmm.
that winds up not being used for one reason or another.
Yeah,
Either you thought it was a great idea and then you drop it for a while and you come back and go, hey, that was a really
yeah.
good idea. Or some projects, you'd be in a competition with 3 or 4 different music houses.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is going to win and 3 of them aren't.
Right.
So you're sitting there looking at this really nice piece of music that you worked on.
Yeah.
I did something for a Japanese car company a couple of years back,
Mm-hmm.
and they really liked the track, but they wound up using something else.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a piece of music that was actually just sitting around on one of my hard drives. And I thought, oh,
Did you
this
do
would
it?
really work.
Did you do anything with it? I mean, after that?
No,
Oh,
no.
that's a shame. Yeah. Couldn't
That's
you
how it
put it in
goes.
an album or anything like that?
I will.
Yeah, good.
I will. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about doing, a compilation of some of my latest
Yeah,
compositions.
I love to hear
Um,
that.
Great.
And I'll
And
promote the
it's
hell out of it too.
cool. I'll give you a heads up.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay, Jimi Hendrix. He was a friend of yours.
Yeah.
He told you that um, he didn't really know who his true friends were anymore. And he was, I guess, wrestling with that. Um, you were, it was tough when he died on you. I guess you guys were very, very close. Did he have any effect on you with your decisions not to join certain rock bands when they asked you?
Yes.
He
Yes.
did. Yeah, I figured that.
Funny. It's funny you should say that because there's a stream of events that all happened very close together. The conversation you're talking about was the
Right.
last time I ever saw him. We played the Isle of Wight in 1970.
Yeah, huge
The big
concert.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was backstage, and he looked really, really sad.
Yeah.
I said, Jimmy, what's wrong? And he just kind of blurted out that, he felt isolated and alone, and he was talking about not knowing who his friends were.
Right.
And by that time, I could already relate. I was still a young guy. So
Mm-hmm.
1970 would have made me like 23 or 24.
Okay.
But I got it. I understood it. And he died several months later. And I was in Paris when I heard the news. I was a co-musical director for the Voices of East Harlem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the news came, and it just, I was in shock for days. I was, just bummed out, obviously. But at that point, it just made me reconsider. Is this something that I really want to do?
Right.
Do I really want to be that guy up in front of the rest of the band with the big spotlights? And I thought to myself, I've already done some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'd rather just be a part of something larger. Not necessarily a group, but projects, going into the recording studio and making that more of an important career than playing live. I still treasure both of those modes a lot. I think playing live and recording are just, the way to live. But yeah, it was just, it was a harsh, cold reality. And, to this day, you're still seeing some of our peers drop off way too early. And sometimes it's because they're unhappy with their lives. The trick is, I think, to try and make a really good life for yourself, and then let those vibes into your music, and then share your music with as many people as you can.
Yeah. I think you have the right idea and the right philosophy, because there's a lot of guys that are they're touring, they're all over the place. Managers are on their case, the record company's on their case. They get burnt out, they're not happy. So I understand where you're coming from, Makes sense.
I mean, lucky or not, I have the benefit of a lot of hindsight, a lot of years in the business.
Yeah.
I figured out I've been playing guitar for like 60 something years already.
Is that all?
That's all. That's all. I'll learn something one day.
Always learning, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Always learning. Because, a lot of people may not realize you were asked to join a lot of bands. One of them, of course, was Steely Dan, Whom
I loved and respect, to the nth degree.
Yeah.
I mean, Donald and I we're in touch, we see each other usually when he's over here, because I haven't done a lot of traveling in the last couple of years.
Right.
But yeah, joining Steely Dan didn't feel like a great idea, because knowing the cast of characters involved, something told me that this band's not going to last beyond three albums. And funny enough, after the third album, they ditched, all of the other sidemen, with the exception of
Right.
Benny Diaz, who deserves to be everywhere,
Yeah.
uh, and just went ahead and got a bunch of studio cats. So
Yeah,
it
exactly.
wound up being the right hunch that I followed. Usually your gut tells you.
Yeah. It was kind of strange. I love Steely Dan, but in the beginning, I could never figure them out because they weren't a band that was going to go out and tour in the beginning.
That's right.
They're like a session band,
Mm-hmm.
basically. But when you saw them on the Midnight Special, they were a band. You know,
Oh
so it
yeah.
was a little confusing in the beginning.
One of the reasons that they stopped touring
Mm-hmm.
back in like 74,
Right.
75, I think it was 74. So it was a short spell, really. Is they wanted, I mean, they were so, even though they weren't making what they would consider perfect albums at the time,
Right.
um, they wanted the audience to experience their music in a way that was as perfect as possible.
Yeah.
At one point, I remember Donald and Walter were in talks with Sony
Mm-hmm.
to talk about equipping everybody in the concert with a pair of headphones.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's not a bad idea, it
Yeah.
didn't work out, but it would have been really, really cool.
I think they were probably perfectionists, weren't they, about their
Oh yeah,
music? Yeah,
yes,
I,
indeed.
I could see that. Um, David Palmer, he gets slammed a lot, but I thought he was a pretty good vocalist.
He is. He is. He's a
Yeah,
very good photographer as well. By the way, that's how he's making
is
his
that
living
right?
these days. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, David had a great voice.
yeah,
The thing is, the reason they hired David was
right.
because Donald wasn't happy with his own voice.
Hmm.
And so by the time they got into halfway through or three-quarters of the way through the first album,
Yeah,
um, Donald just said, "No, that's not really what I'm looking for. I guess I better try and grit my teeth and try and sing it."
right.
And he wound up singing it singing whatever
Yeah,
he sang really, really well.
it's amazing.
And he's become an even better vocalist.
Yeah.
And as time goes on, some of us can do that, so it's nice.
Well, I had one of your old buddies on the show. Great guy, love him to
Mm-hmm.
death. Jeff Skunk Baxter.
Mm-hmm.
You guys grew up together?
We did.
Huh? How about
We did
that?
indeed.
How old were you when you guys were hanging out? I mean, were you
We
kids
first
or
met. We first met on 48th Street, which is
really?
that's where everybody goes to buy their musical instruments.
Yeah.
And he was working at Manny's, and I was working at a place called Ben's. Both of those
Uh-huh.
places are no longer there. 48th
Right.
Street is no longer there the way it was for all
Yep.
intents and purposes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we wound up bonding on our love for both the Ventures
Mm-hmm.
on one side and
Mm-hmm.
Howard Roberts,
Hmm.
the jazz guitar player, on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, stayed in touch, played as much as we could. And I remember once I was playing with Seatrain, and we wound up playing Boston, and Jeff shows up, and then we wound up hanging out for I don't know, couple of days on end, and he would visit me in New York, and I would visit him in Boston, and then later when he moved to L.A., we would hang out, as the first Steely Dan record was being recorded.
Right.
So yeah, we have a long and I dare say checkered history.
And of course, he's got that. He works on top secret projects for the government, which is pretty cool.
So it is said.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what he tells me anyway.
Well, his dad was a big security guy.
Right,
His
right.
his dad was involved in the CIA.
Huh.
And that's kind of what brought Jeff into the realm of that sort of
Right.
national defense and all. But I'm not going to put it past him. I mean, he's a really, really good scientist.
Mm-hmm.
He really understands
Yep.
a lot about electronics. I hope by now he's learned computers. But yeah, he's an interesting character.
I told him if he ever shaved his mustache, nobody's going to recognize him.
Well, he'll never do that.
He's had that mustache forever.
Yes, he has.
I think Stephen Stills' dad worked for the CIA too, what I understand, if I remember. Yeah. I used to have some friends from the CIA because I grew up in D.C. Of course, they were all from Langley. They all worked at Langley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I had to vouch for them. They would come to my door and ask questions about them and things like that. And my brother-in-law worked for the FBI, so I had to be careful.
Well, yeah. I mean, funny enough, I do some audio forensic work with the Metropolitan Police here. Called
Really?
Yard.
Audio forensic work? How does that work?
Well, you have to know your audio.
Okay.
And you have to be able to clean up recordings
Right.
that may have too many artifacts, may have too much reverb, may have too much, may not have the appropriate frequencies that you can really hear well. So you have to, in a sense, make a production and a mix without interfering with the original, what it is that you're listening to.
Right.
And it's great. It's challenging.
Yeah.
It's fun, and it's also to try and serve the people, keep everybody safe.
Do you ever get people that wore wires and you got to decipher that, I guess, that kind of thing?
Personally, no. I did a lot of work with video camera recording.
Okay.
Having to work on those tracks.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But funny enough, I mean, every country has its own laws, and some laws are smarter than other laws.
Right.
And one of the problems that I found here in England is that there's only a certain amount of data that will be accepted by the courts when it comes to video recording.
Really?
So sometimes they'll actually say, well, we can use the video, but we're not going to, the audio is out. So
interesting.
Why? It doesn't make sense, but it's a law. So
do the cops in England still not carry guns? Is that?
For the most part, they don't.
They still don't.
Okay. No, that's right. We have a couple of different squads. One of them is CO-19 that actually patrol the city with all of their armament in the boot, the trunk of the car.
Right. I got you.
And they get called, if there's some sort of a gun incident, CO-19 will be called in straight away.
So they start.
That's right. And there's enough of them around so that you can get to, even though London is a huge city.
Yeah.
Our squad can get there pretty darn quickly.
They still have Scotland Yard. Does that still exist? Yeah.
It's called New Scotland Yard, and it's
New
in its
Scotland
third
Yard.
iteration now. Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. All right. Reelin in the Years. How'd you come up with that?
It just came from my heart. There were no instructions.
Right.
I just was brought in to play the track. And I listened down once and I said, Donald, can I see a copy of the words, please? Because I want to know what it is that I'm playing to. So rather than trying to pay attention and listen to what they're saying, I'm like, oh, I get it. Okay. And what I played was just it was totally instinctual. So there were no instructions. It was just play what you want.
Right.
And in fact, funny enough, they actually asked me to play more than you hear on the record. They asked me to answer all of the different pieces of the chorus with little licks.
I would have liked to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but it was too much.
Right.
You can actually hear what I played. There's a if you can find the Quad album.
Okay.
It's got pretty much everything on it.
Right.
But I think that the version that you hear it on the radio is the way to go.
Well, you did a very nice job.
Well, thank you very much.
It was only ranked 40th best guitar solo of all time Uh, Jimmy Page said it was his favorite solo of all time. Yeah, I think he did okay.
It's the thing with Jimmy. It's been said, that's what
Yeah,
I think more accurately, it could be one of his favorite solos of all
right,
time.
right.
He was
Yeah,
a huge fan of Jimi Hendrix.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, he really just loved what Jimmy did, as
yeah.
did I.
Oh, yeah. It's a,
Because there was a creative aspect that
right.
Hendrix did. Nobody else, certainly not until him, could figure out how to go that extra mile.
Yep.
He was with his he understood feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just a very innate thing. It wasn't like the science of, if I do this, this will happen. It was like he figured out that if he's playing loud enough
Right.
and he moves a certain way, and the guitar string might be open or it might be really, super amped,
Mm-hmm.
that he would get feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And that if he could turn the instrument a little this way or a little that way, that the feedback note would change.
Right.
And there was a whole harmonic concept to that was just like, wow, what the heck is he doing? So, I think that Jimmy Page really appreciated that also.
Yeah. I want to get your feedback on something. I've talked to many artists who also knew Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One guy tells me Jimmy was going to join Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Another guy tells me he was going to get into fusion after that. What do you think would have been the next step for Jimi Hendrix in his career?
Oh, he and Miles Davis were talking about putting the group together.
Him and Miles Davis. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
some
in a
jazz
sense, you could
fusion.
call it fusion, but
Yeah.
it wasn't really. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of fusion, but not fusion
Right.
the way we know it,
Right.
because Jimmy's style and Miles's style were both like really out there in the
Yep.
nicest of ways. And they had infinite respect for each other
Mm-hmm.
and each other's creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have been an unbelievable band. And
Yeah.
I really, really wish Jimmy were with us today.
Yeah.
He's one of the big losses.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved, Buddy Miles. I loved all the Billy Cox, all those guys. And of course, Billy
Gypsies.
Cobham would have been great in the band.
Mm.
Yeah. John Mclaughlin. Did John Mclaughlin and Hendrix ever get together? Have they ever, you know that?
Geez, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, that would have been interesting, huh? That would have been interesting.
Two different sides of the spectrum, too, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, you got Reelin in the Years, then you played on Kings for Steely Dan. You were on Katie Lied.
Yeah.
You did the Royal Scam. What songs did you play on the Royal Scam?
The Royal Scam.
I love that
one
album.
of my favorite, one of my favorite records.
It's great.
I did. There's one called. Let me see. I had Paul Griffin. Well, Paul was on most of the record. Let me see.
That Haitian Divorce, right?
No, that's Larry
Okay.
Carlton. Yeah.
Right.
Sign and Stranger.
Okay.
And Sign and Stranger is really great. It's got this really fun dialogue between Donald, Paul Griffin on piano, and myself on guitar. And what was happening was Donald would sing a line, Paul would answer it, and then I would wind up answering Paul. So it's like this three-way dialogue that's absolutely wonderful. And then what was the other one? There was one other one on that album. Have you got a contents of the album somewhere close?
Let's see. Looking it up now.
It was Green Earrings.
Oh, Green Earrings. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yes. And that was great because they let me fly on that one as well.
Okay.
Denny took this really great guitar solo first, and then it was my turn, and then I wound up playing through the fade. And I was using two different sound effects. One of them was a Fox tone machine, which is it's a germanium fuzz tone. But it's really, really weird. It was beautifully designed in America, I might add, and built there as well.
Unusual.
It had a little switch. Yeah, it had what they called an octave switch. But if you switched it up, it would send the fuzz signal soaring an octave higher. So,
Wow.
and I wound up changing the switch for the manual switch for a foot switch. So
Yeah.
I could just stomp on it and go, that kind of
Nice.
stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And I also used a Mutron biphase,
Okay.
which was a very, very strange 180-degree phase shifter.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually had two of them in it. And I had one of them going really slowly, like, and the other one bubbling. So I'd start out with the slow one, and then when I felt it was appropriate, I'd kick in the fast one as well. And it was just really fun. It was really, really fun.
That was a great album. That probably one of my favorite Steely Dan albums was Royal Scam.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they, you know, one of the many things I understood about being in the studio was the vibe between the musicians.
Yeah.
And on this album, they wound up using 3 of Aretha's rhythm section. Right? It was Bernard Purdie on drums,
right?
Chuck Rainey on bass,
yep,
and Paul Griffin on keyboards.
Oh wow!
And they knew that these guys had issues with each other from time to time. If you could press the button, press their button, and they were pressing their buttons like crazy. And the reason, you know, was to get this. They wanted attention, a certain kind of tension that the album possesses. It worked. Their plan really worked brilliantly.
Would you have enjoyed working with the Wrecking Crew?
Which iteration? Yes, of course.
I know there's been many.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you've got all these very legendary recording rhythm sections, right?
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
the Wrecking Crew in LA. There were the Swampers down in Muscle Shoals.
Right.
Who did so much more work than people know. You know, you don't know that you're listening to them when you're listening to a Rod Stewart record or a Traffic record. Or,
exactly.
You know, they played everything. It was Roger Hawkins, David Hood, Barry Beckett, just phenomenal players. So there was those guys, and of course Nashville had this huge amount of wonderful musicians. And of course, it's always been a magnet, and still is. That's
they still
like
do. Yeah.
The one place that the musicians, you know, feel valued and hang out is Nashville.
Yeah, exactly.
But New York, I mean, we had an unbelievable array of talent, and we never called ourselves anything. We just sort of jokingly at one point were calling ourselves the Cats. Hey, we're the Cats, man. You know? But so, you know.
Good old days.
Chicago was another city that had amazing musicians.
Yeah. Well,
and I was very fortunate because I got to play with most of them. In most of those, you know, cities. And at one point, Jerry Wexler brought me down to do a Steve Bassett album down in Muscle Shoals, and it was like going to heaven. It really was.
You know, Jerry is buried here. I'm close to Sarasota, and he spent his last years of his life in Sarasota. Here, I wish I got to meet him. You know, and
he was an amazing character.
Yeah,
I mean, he was
pioneer.
From, he could tell great stories.
Right,
but all of his great stories were actually based on real life events.
Exactly.
This is the guy who coined the term rhythm and blues.
Exactly.
You know, phenomenal.
Exactly. That's what we need today. We need pioneers, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, with the new direction.
We have a few. I think we have a few.
Yeah.
But nowhere near as many as we used to have because the industry was focused on bringing new talent to life. Now, with the industry, I say industry, I'm talking about, you know, the people who control the business end of it.
Right.
It's basically about, you know, selling subscriptions, whether it's to Spotify or, you know, one of those other. They don't really care for the musicians.
They don't
care about the musicians.
They don't care about the music.
Crazy. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Which is very sad. I hope it would
is.
change one day, you know?
Yeah,
I
and
really do.
I wouldn't even call it sour grapes on my part,
Yeah,
because it's like that's where we've wound up. So
right.
the challenge now for all serious artists or
Mm-hmm.
musicians who want people to pay attention to what they're doing, you got to come up with new ideas,
Yeah,
new ways to sell yourself.
right.
Uh,
Well,
these days,
the worst things that happen, radio, you don't
mm,
have the personalities in radio anymore. You don't have top 40 like it used to be promoting the new music that comes out. You don't have record stores. I mean,
mm,
that went hand in hand. You heard a new record on the radio and you ran down to your record store and bought it. And then
absolutely.
concerts were cheap. I mean, $6, you get three bands, three legendary
Yeah,
rock bands, because concerts were there to sell the record,
that's right.
but now, what the hell's Bruce Springsteen charging $5,000? I mean, come on.
Yeah, yeah, I've
That's
heard
just
that. That's like,
ridiculous.
yeah. I mean, is it really Bruce or is it his
It
management
doesn't
or is
matter. He's
no, it
got
does.
some say in it if he wants to,
Yeah,
So that's off the scale. That's way out of whack. I mean,
it
even
is.
$150 for a ticket, that's you know. Luckily, I
There's an
get in
awful
all my
lot of
shows for free.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, there's an awful lot of people out there who would love to listen to music but simply can't afford
They
a
can't
ticket,
afford it.
and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
So what
Even
do? We put our
yeah,
stuff up on the internet for people to listen
YouTube.
to.
Yeah.
We'll do social media.
Right.
We'll do. Um, I like doing interviews, and this
Yeah.
is fun because it gets people
Sure.
more or less. It gives them a little insight into who you are and what it
Exactly.
is that you're doing. Oh, that's why it sounds like that. That sort
Right.
of thing. Great.
Sure. Exactly right. Well, the other big tune that's going to continue on making residuals is probably
Mhm.
Fame, right?
Mm.
That was a biggie.
It was a biggie. It still
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I'm always pleased to see those checks coming in that that say Fame on them.
You do a little dance, right? A little Fame dance.
That's right. Actually, a big Fame day. It was a fun project. It was a fun movie. Um, the music was written by a guy called Michael Gore, who, by the
Hmm.
way, is Leslie Gore's younger
Oh,
brother.
I used to love Leslie Gore. She was great.
Oh, she was a doll. Absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah. So Michael wrote the music with his partner who wrote the lyrics. And I got called in. I don't know why.
Hmm.
Somebody said, let's get Elliott Randall to do this.
Hmm.
Okay, great. I get into media sound. There's a great big Marshall sitting out there. And I'm in pig heaven. I'm having fun, really enjoying playing on it. And then Michael calls me into the control room because there's this long solo. There's like a 36 measure solo or something,
Hmm.
way more than is needed. And he said, I just got a call from the director of the movie, Alan
Hmm.
Parker.
Right.
And he said, the thing with the solo is they're not really sure just how long they want the dance scene to be in the movie.
Oh,
So what we need you to do is to divide it in 3
okay.
so that if they want a 12 measures, they want 24 measures, they
Right.
want 30, but it has to be seamless.
Hmm.
So it's not like this is the end of measure 12 and here's the beginning of it's like it's supposed to go through, but they also have to be able to edit it in
Hmm.
case they want to stop it right there.
Hmm.
And truly one of the most challenging assignments I've ever had.
Yeah.
Even now, when I listen to it, I think, oh shit, I can still hear where I wanted to do something else. But never mind, the residuals keep coming in, and I'm not unhappy with the way the guitar solo turned out. So
Yeah. Yeah. Here's a little trivia question for you. Baker Street, the song Baker Street,
Jerry Rafferty, yeah.
Jerry Rafferty. Well, they thought it was probably going to be too long for radio, but the guy that made that happen was Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere and the Raiders. He was an A&R man at the time, and he pushed it. He said, "This is a great," he's the one. He was responsible for getting it on the radio.
Wow. I
Mark
didn't know that.
Lindsay. Yeah, I talked to Mark. He's another great guy.
Mm.
Yeah.
The saxophone solo on that is just
Ah,
so haunting.
yeah.
Really, it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, like your Steely Dan solo, that sax solo is one that
Mm.
you always hear in your
Yeah.
mind, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, the whole idea of doing anything musical
Hmm.
that's supposed to grab the audience straight away is if you haven't got them in the first 10, 20 seconds, you've
Right.
lost them.
Right. That's true.
So you can't be boring, and you
Right.
can't be too subtle when it comes to making something that's supposed to make people go, oh, like that.
Yeah. On the payouts, I always get into this money thing,
Yeah.
residuals and all that stuff. If you play a lead that you created on a record,
Mm-hmm.
how is that the payout compared to, say, being a songwriter of lyrics? The songwriter makes a lot more money, or how's that
Oh
work?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless they've signed to a publisher who's screwing them.
Which happens a lot.
Oh yeah, sure. No, there are varying scales.
Okay.
You know, the uh the monies that you get as a music creator, that is to say, as somebody who actually wrote the material, the song,
Okay.
um, it's a completely different money pot
Gotcha.
than the musicians.
Okay.
And funny enough, now as royalties are, I won't say drying up, but slowing down a bit,
Hmm.
it's important for musicians. Listen to me out there, musicians. Find all of the monies that you're owed. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's less difficult. Living here in England is interesting because I belong to a thing called PPL, performing something or other. It's and what they do is they tally up all of the times that the piece of music that you've played on has been played, and you wind up getting these, I dare say, ridiculous checks. Ridiculous good, not ridiculous bad. 4 times a year. It's just unbelievable.
Wow.
We never had that in the States.
Yeah.
Now there's the American Federation of Musicians and AFTRA have put together a sort of a smaller version of that, so that musicians get an interesting, oh, that's a nice little bonus, one
Yes.
check a year. But it's better than they were getting.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Were you always savvy when it came down to checking, royalties and things like that when you were back in your younger days, or, I know that's
I'll
musicians
tell you what,
aren't very savvy in the beginning. They just want to,
sadly, this is true.
yeah,
In 1969, when I was playing with Seatrain,
right.
we did a bunch of recording,
Hmm.
and the union, the American Federation of Musicians, have a thing whereby the record company have to pay into a pot that becomes what's called the EPW. It's a pension fund,
Right.
right? So after a certain amount of years, that's how your pension gets built up. But also, they have to pay you for the session work that you've done. And I had left everything in the hands of the guy who was the manager, a guy called Bennett Glotzer. And he took every penny.
Oh, gosh.
It wasn't until the end of either 69 or 70 when my W-2 came in and said, A&M Records, we've paid you. I never got this money. And had the union just chase it down for me.
Why do they do that? Why you got to be a crook?
Because
Doesn't
they
make
can.
sense. They're going to
No,
make
it
enough
doesn't.
money. Yeah.
At karma, it's
Yeah.
if he's alive now, I'm sure he's not sleeping very well. But it's just it's a drag that it happens,
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, I mean, as you go through, unfortunate incidents like that,
You
you
learn.
build up your sort of your smart set and figure, okay, let me check. Then you keep records in a book. Have I been paid? Tick it off, and like that.
you're so excited to be performing and hear your songs on the radio that you don't even think about that side of the business when you're young.
Sadly,
Anyway.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, the well-rounded professional
Hmm.
should have an understanding of all of
Yes,
that stuff.
exactly.
And it's not it's about street smarts, really.
Yeah.
The college of the streets, as opposed to. It's funny. I belong to an organization here called James, the
Hmm.
Joint Audio Media Education something or other. And what we do is we actually we go to the various universities and we grade their music programs. And the thing that's James's sort of trademark is that if you have their stamp on your course, then it's a good course.
Hmm.
And I got to tell you, I've seen a lot of courses in a lot of universities here.
Right.
Some of them are really good.
Yep.
And a lot of them, don't even get me started.
Yeah.
Because they're selling a dream.
They just take, yeah.
Either, hey, learn with us here and you're going to go out and be successful. No, that's not the way it works.
Like becoming an actor in Hollywood and all that stuff. They charge a lot of money for the photos and same kind of thing. Huh.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is to learn as much as one can
Yep.
from every possible angle.
It's even tougher today though, because music is being stolen left and right. Artists aren't getting paid. I mean, when I review an album, even from a legendary artist, sometimes I'll get the album. I'm not supposed to share it with anybody because the album doesn't come out till like next month. But sometimes it's already on YouTube. How the hell are they getting the music?
I've always wondered that. I've always wondered how some of these tracks,
I don't get it.
Here's James Jamerson solo.
Right.
I'm sorry, he didn't give anybody permission to do that.
No.
Somebody got hold of the Motown tapes and, did what they wanted with them.
It's unbelievable.
But it's not just Motown, it's all of them. I mean, you can, no matter where you are, Michael Jackson, everything,
Sometimes our publicists will say, Ray, do you want me to send you the album? No, it's already on YouTube. I'll review it off YouTube.
Wow.
It's crazy. Well, this is a band you don't hear about too much anymore. And I'll be honest with you, I used to love this song and it brought back so many memories. But I don't think you were on this, right? 13 Questions by Seatrain.
I had left by that point.
You left by that point, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Darn, you missed that one.
I did. I missed a lot of ones, but that's all right.
But they were a great band, and I think they always opened up for Traffic back in the day.
It was a wonderful band.
Really, really. And so you were actually in a band for a while.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I was in Seatrain for close to a year.
Yeah.
I was with Sha-Na-Na for a year.
Right.
Which was a very funny experience because I got to be the guy that I always wanted to be when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
The big pompadour and the black leather jacket and greasy,
Was Bowser there?
Oh yeah.
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 He's still out there doing these tours and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a fun experience.
Yep.
Musically, it wasn't as satisfying as I would like for it to have been.
Right.
Because the players were basically a bunch of college guys. Hey, let's go form a band, and and never really, with the exception of a couple, never really pursued becoming great on their instruments.
Right.
And
right.
genre. But it was fun. It was a great stage show. Phenomenal stage show.
They played Woodstock.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Not a bad first gig.
Not a bad. Yeah, exactly. But you had a chance to join Wilson Pickett, right?
Yep.
And
I was friendly with.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was going to say you joined Seatrain, I think, instead at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. I was playing at the Wagon Wheel, which was one of the many New York nightclubs on the same block as the Peppermint Lounge. Back in the late 60s.
Oh, speaking of that, I had Joey D on the show not long ago.
Mr. Di Nicola. I like him.
Yeah, he lives in Clearwater, by the way. Not too far from me. Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
He looks great too, by the way.
I know. Last time I
Yeah.
saw him, I was playing a charity. It was a golf tournament
Right.
somewhere down in Florida.
Yeah.
Joey was there in all his splendor and glory, and we just yucked it up, talking, sort of remembering the old days.
Exactly.
Because 45th Street was like the place to be
Mm-hmm.
if you were an up and coming musician. It was like, particularly rock and R&B.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I have such great memories of all of those nightclubs. But yeah, I became friendly with who was it? Don Covay. Don Covay, who wrote Chain of Fools. He wrote a number of really, really great tunes. He was also a really great record producer.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he taught me more about being a studio musician, an effective studio musician, than most other people. He had a small studio in a little hotel on 73rd Street off of Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
And he would have me come in and play on, originally, a lot of his demos. And I'd come in and I'd play, and he'd go, Elliot, hang on a second, man. We don't need you to play that much. Now, if you just tone it down here and then come back in strong here. And it was all about dynamics and about, this isn't about you, this is about the record.
Right.
So he was just an incredible, incredible teacher, producer, writer, everything. And it was he who was friendly with Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
He might have even produced some of Wilson's stuff. And he said, would you like to come down to, I think they were doing it in Muscle Shoals.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to come down to Muscle Shoals and record, Wilson's next album. Oh, that sounds great. And within about 3 or 4 days, I got the offer to join Seatrain. And for some reason, and I can't really explain the logic behind it,
Mm-hmm.
I felt that Seatrain would be the way to go.
Right.
It's very funny. In those days, I used to wear a hat, and it wasn't dissimilar to some of the felt hats that Jimmy wore and Dwayne Allman.
Right.
And Wilson came over to me. You the guy from down Muscle Shoals? No, I guess I could Dwayne, but very flattering.
Nobody could scream better than Wilson Pickett.
That's right. That's right.
Oh man, I love that guy. I loved all of the. I grew up on R&B. I love Joe Tex, Wilson Pickett, all those, Edwin Starr. And those guys are incredible, man. They really
we'll have
were.
to spend an evening listening to records some point and just, move on them. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, you met Robert Stigwood, right?
Stigwood, he was my manager.
He was your manager. Okay.
Yeah. In 1970, I was the musical director for a guy called Eric Mercury.
Okay.
Who had his first album called Electric Black Man, which Gary Katz produced.
Mm-hmm.
Under the pseudonym Gary Cannon.
Right.
And Eric was being managed by the Stigwood organization. And the president of the Stigwood organization in America was a guy called Rick Gunnell, G-N-E-L. And Rick and his brother John were these two legendary British sort of East End mobsters. And I say this with affection because, they did me really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
They opened up a club called the Flamingo, which was the first multiracial music club in Britain. So Rick comes over to me after some sound check or something at the Whiskey A Go-Go, smoking a big Cuban cigar. He said, son, I'd like to make you a star. What do you think? Okay. And hence, I got signed to the Stigwood organization, got a record deal with Polydor, and it was good. It was, it was really interesting, an interesting slice of life. You
did Jesus Christ Superstar, right? Didn't you work with that?
Speaking of Stigwood, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how that came about really quickly. Randall's Island, my band, which was right. Polydor, we did 2 records. The first one got pretty good critical acclaim. and actually sold pretty well around the world. And the second album was called Rock and Roll City, and it was more of a sort of group effort, and it sounded a bit more eclectic. It got jazzy, it got rocky, it got that. And it was something that the record company didn't quite understand. And I think that Stigwood got a little unhappy with the fact that we weren't going to be getting the sort of support from the record company that you would have liked to have.
Right.
But he had just purchased the rights to Superstar.
Right.
And in all of his wisdom, he thought to himself, okay, I need musicians for the pit band on Broadway. And
yeah.
How about Randall's Island? They're just, they're part of our, our list of, musicians. And they offered us the gig. So we did about 2 or 3 months of touring, breaking the show in before it hit Broadway. And I did that for a year. The show went on a whole lot longer, but a year of playing the same music.
I can see that.
It was, a bit much.
Who was Jesus? It wasn't Ted Neely, was it?
No, Teddy was actually, he was in the cast.
Okay.
But he was playing a lesser character.
I got
the guy who played Jesus, pardon me, was a guy called Jeff Fenholt.
Okay.
From Ohio.
Yep.
And Yvonne Elliman, of course, was just fantastic.
Oh, she's marvelous. Yeah. Of course, Ian Gillan was on the record from Deep Purple. Yeah.
Yes.
He did a great job too.
That record really set the bar.
Oh my God. I can still listen to it over and over again. Huh?
Yeah.
That did a lot for bringing religion back to the younger generation. It really did. Adding Godspell, Yeah.
Indeed. I'll tell you a funny story about Superstar and religion. It offended some very, very serious Christians back in the day.
Of course.
And when we hit the South on a tour before we actually settled onto Broadway, we got quite a bit of flack. In fact, there was one city, I think it was Birmingham, Alabama, where we had to clear out because there was a bomb scare.
Really?
Praise the Lord. It was just nuts. But people will always be people, and
no matter what you do, there's going to be somebody that's against you.
That's right.
You can't win. I interviewed Norman Greenbaum, and he had both religions against him. First of all, he was Jewish.
Yeah.
So he had the Jews against him for singing a Christianity type song. And then the Christians were mad because he said he doesn't sin on the lyrics. So he couldn't win. But still, that song is sung at every funeral you can imagine, even today.
It's ingrained in our psyche.
It really is. It really is. Yeah.
And it was a good vibes tune. It was a really, really good vibes piece.
Yeah. Some good fuzz guitar there too.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's a guy that we both admire. I think you admire him very, very much. My first concert that I ever went to was this guy, Curtis Mayfield.
My hero, my absolute hero. He's the hero for a lot of people who don't even know who he is.
Exactly.
Because those of us who were really aware of what he was doing, which was quite spectacular on guitar.
Yeah.
It was simple, but spectacular. We just carried it forward in our playing. I still, every time I pick up the guitar, I hear myself being Curtis for a minute. Jimi Hendrix was the same thing. One of the things that we used to do is sit around and listen to Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions records.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, what's he doing there? Oh, that's cool. He does a lot of these parallel fourths and, and going to six.
Exactly.
Things that, where did that come from? I don't know. But he was just an amazing, amazing musician.
I saw Curtis 1971. It was Jose Feliciano and Curtis Mayfield. And this was right before Superfly came out, Superfly, Freddy's Dead. I mean, that was a cool album. Yeah. And of course, the Impressions, great band, really great band. I got to ask you about what do you think about working on Milk and Honey, which was, I guess, technically John Lennon's last album with Yoko, right?
Yeah, yeah. I love doing it.
Yeah,
Sadly, it was cut, or a lot of it was cut
really.
after John died. So I had just moved back to New York
Hmm.
from LA, and I got a call from Eddie Germano, the owner of the Hit Factory
Right, right.
recording studio.
Yep.
And he said, "Hey, we're doing a record here with Yoko. You want to play on it?" In his beautiful Brooklyn accent. And I said, "Well, that sounds like fun, sure." So I show up at Hit Factory, and there are these wonderful, wonderful players. You know, the band was just spectacular.
Yep.
The studio was spectacular. Everything was spectacular. Yoko walks in, and here's the introduction. She comes into the studio. You hear the heels clicking. She looks at us and she says, "Good morning, ladies," to all of us men. You know? And it just broke the ice. It was like, oh, we're going to have fun on this one. And we did. We had loads of fun.
I didn't realize Yoko actually had a falling out with David Geffen. That's what I heard.
I don't know about it, but I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. And that's why she did this album separate without David Geffen, I think. That's why this came about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, David is one of those characters that you keep hearing about. You know,
Right.
I really couldn't comment on him because we never really hung out. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Oh,
But you know,
interesting.
he was pretty instrumental in Laura Nyro's career,
Right, right.
and a lot of other people. You know, and he was actually well respected by a lot of folks.
What a songwriter, Laura Nyro. Oh my goodness. She's such a great songwriter.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
We were classmates. We both went to music and art high school together.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And we were part of a little singing group, which we did, you know, sort of away from the school, but it was based on 4 of us who went to the school. And it was heaven. You know, we'd go and find these little tunnels, you know, in parks that had reverb in them, so that when you sang, it was like, you know, it was like being in a recording studio. It was wonderful.
Did you ever go to the Brill building and talk to all those guys?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I did a lot of stuff in the Brill building.
Did you?
Demos for other people. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And Don Kirshner, who ended up being my second label head when I joined Kirshner Records. He and Al Nevins had Al Don and Don. Sorry, Don, yeah, Al Nevin. They had a set of offices there, and they cultured everybody. They cultured, you know, Carole King, Jerry Goffin, Cynthia Wilde, Barry Mann. The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
He knew his stuff.
Yeah. Kirshner was another pioneer, you know?
Yeah.
Another good guy. He brought us Kansas, the band Kansas,
That's
the
right.
Monkees. Yeah, the Monkees. He brought Sugar Sugar to the Monkees, and the Monkees didn't want to do it. So, of course, the Archies got all the credit for that.
Well, yeah. That's actually Ron Dante.
Ron Dante, yeah, that's right.
And Ron wound up producing Barry Manilow.
Really? I didn't know that. Yeah. Another guy I admire, Barry Manilow, man. What another great songwriter.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Well, here's your final question, and here's a question I ask everybody, and I get some very interesting answers. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, to perform or collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be? Now, that's going to be tough for you because you've met everybody.
That's real tough. That's real tough. It would involve bringing people back.
Right.
From
that's fine.
The other world. It would probably be Paul Griffin.
Paul Griffin.
The keyboard player I was talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Paul played with everybody. You know, he was an R&B guy. He was a church guy. He was a jazz guy.
Yep.
And he played on American Pie.
Yep.
He's all over the map. I still have some wonderful recordings that we did, which actually will probably wind up being part of that record we were talking about. That I'm
right.
Today. But soul, inspiration, humor, all of the things that make an art form great.
Yeah.
He did. He did.
Yep. And I'm going to throw in maybe Miles Davis, you and Miles Davis, maybe.
God, yes. Miles taught me so much, third hand or second hand, but his philosophy of how to make music.
Mm-hmm.
When you read some of the quotes that are attributed to him, most of which will be true.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody says, "Gosh, I don't know what to play here." He said, "Well, if you don't know what to play, don't play anything." And he was another believer in that music is really the space between the notes.
Right.
If you listen to his records, it's not all this blasting,
Yeah.
He does that sometimes when he wants to,
Yeah.
but other times he just leaves holes and lets the listener imagine things and comes in with a little surprise and goes
I love
away
that.
for a
Yeah.
that sort of dynamic is what delights me the most.
Yeah.
And I try and do that in my music as well. I try and be surprising.
Yep.
And
Well, what's next for Elliott Randall? We expect a dynamite album from you with lots of guest artists. That's coming.
yeah.
No pressure.
Hey, I'll send you a few tracks as well.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. But with all the people you know in the industry, what an album you can put together, right? I mean, that's what's happening now. Where you're getting a lot of that. A lot of artists are getting all their friends together and they're just putting out these great albums with superstars on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's one guy that comes to mind that you would like on your album? Somebody from the past.
Okay. How about Jeff Downes?
Jeff Downes.
Jeff Downes, phenomenal keyboard player.
Yeah.
I know he's known as an organ player or synthesis, but he played all the keyboard beautifully. And we spent some time playing together in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, very funny because the first date that I did for them before joining the band,
right?
I'm sitting in the studio with his collaborator, a guy called John Payne.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I know John.
mentioned well, Jeff used to be in the Buggles.
Yep.
Because Video Killed the Radio Star when it first came out, blew my brains to pieces. And when I found out it was that guy, it was that much more of a bond. But we had some incredible times in the studio together. Oh yeah, I would call him in. Absolutely.
Awesome. I've had Jeff on the show several times. He's a good guy. Of course, he's still in Yes. And I've got Chris Braid coming up soon. That's his collaborator in the in his new band. They've been putting out some good music as well. So I got Chris coming up on the show not long from that. They've got a new album coming out, him and Jeff. So they're putting all the final touches now, and then they're going to release it soon.
That's great.
Yeah. Elliot, thank you so much, man, for being on the show today. It's been great.
It's my pleasure, man. Really great.
Talking to a guy like you is like, reading a bunch of classic rock and music books from the past, and it's history. It really is.
There's always more stories to tell, and hopefully we'll be making the material for more stories to tell as time goes on.
Have you written a book? Have you done a book yet?
Funny you should say that. Yeah, I'm sort of working on it little by little. There's so many different places to go in a book.
I know.
And so yeah, I got a few editors here, and I am working on it.
Well, do you have any pictures? Have you collected pictures over the years? Yeah, but
there's still a lot of pictures I wish I had. And
I know. Yeah.
As time goes on, though, on the internet, you find these things. I didn't know that picture was there. Or
right.
Existed. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to contact you in the future. I put this out. It's called the Rockstar Chronicles, Series 1.
Oh, yes. Great.
And you're going to be maybe in the next series. I'll contact you.
It would be a pleasure
to put you in there. I mean, I've got everybody in there. Greg Emerson, Lincoln Palmer, Yes, Jethro Tull, everybody's in there. And maybe the next series I'll get guys, maybe from, a little older, maybe from the earlier 60s, late 50s, and things like that. And, some of the pioneers that got it all started anyway.
Great.
So we'll see how it goes. Thank you, man.
Right.
Your official website, www.elliott-randall.com. You're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn,
Everywhere.
you're on YouTube, and Elliott Randall Bandcamp. That's the other site that you're on as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yep. Thank you, man.
Right.
I appreciate it. Keep doing
Lovely
what you're
chatting
doing.
with you.
And if you ever want to sell one of your guitars, let me know. I'm looking for one.
Cool, man.
All right, Elliot. Take care.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.